Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Monday, the 9th of February. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. It's great to have you with us on this bitterly cold day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Korea's main opposition party elects former presidential candidate Moon Jae-in as its new leader, as the party looks to reorganize itself ahead of some crucial elections. As tensions grow ahead of next month's joint South Korea-U.S. military drills, North Korea fires 5 short-range missiles into the East Sea. Plus, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, Germany and France will hold a summit in Belarus on Wednesday to discuss a peace plan for eastern Ukraine. But our top story this morning, Korea's main opposition party, the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, has a new leader. Former presidential candidate Moon Jae-in claimed victory with more than 45% of the vote at a national party convention in Seoul on Sunday. He faces the daunting task of revamping a party in turmoil and leading it to victory in 2 critical elections, some by-elections this year and the general election next year. Ji Myung-gil reports.
Moon Jae-in was elected the chairman of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy, promising fresh leadership and vowed to bring together a party stricken by deep-rooted factional strife.
From this moment on, our party will renounce lethargy and factional divisions. We will move forward through change and unity, defend democracy, and work to boost the economy. I, Moon Jae-in, will reward the party by leading it to victory in the general election next year.
Moon overtook rival candidates Park Geunhye and Lee In-young. He inherits the post from the interim leader Moon Hee-sang. The chairmanship has been vacant since co-leaders Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo stepped down in July. The country's largest opposition group has seen its popularity drop since the by-elections in July due to an overwhelming defeat by the ruling Saenuri Party. Since the drubbing, the party has failed to present a clear vision of its goals, grappling instead with internal feuds. 5 Supreme Council members were elected at the party convention on Sunday. They and Moon are tasked with leading the party to an upcoming by-election in April and the general election next year. The new leadership was elected through spot polls of party representatives and opinion polls of party members and the general public. The party also adopted a revised version of its constitution, which stipulates the rules for nominating candidates for the general election. With a new leader in place, the party now faces the challenge of regaining the public trust and presenting a vision for the party in the future. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geunhye is likely to carry out a small cabinet reshuffle sometime next week after Parliament approves her Prime Minister nominee. The President appointed Lee Wang-gu, the floor leader of the ruling Saenuri Party, to replace Prime Minister Jung Hong-won. The National Assembly is scheduled to hold a confirmation hearing for the Prime Minister nominee on Tuesday and Wednesday. The vote will probably take place on Thursday. Now, political watchers say that if the hearing goes smoothly, the reshuffle could take place as early, in fact, as this weekend. North Korea fired 5 short-range missiles off its east coast on Sunday. Seoul's defense ministry says the projectiles were fired late Sunday afternoon from Wonsan and flew about 200 kilometers before landing in the sea. North Korea frequently fires these kind of short-range missiles as part of its military drills, usually to demonstrate its military prowess when feeling pressure from the outside world. The latest firing comes ahead of a large-scale South Korea-U.S. military drill scheduled to begin in March. And while the 2 allies have said time and time again that these annual exercises are purely defensive in nature, Pyongyang continues to see them as a preparation for an invasion. The United Nations imposed sanctions banning North Korea from launching longer-range ballistic missiles, but not short-range missiles. South Korea is pushing for progress on the North Korean nuclear issue. Seoul's foreign minister spent the weekend trying to move things forward, meeting first with his US counterpart John Kerry and then with Russia's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. Connie Kim reports.
South Korea and the U.S. are seeing eye to eye on how to deal with North Korea's nuclear weapons program and have both expressed concern about the North's advancement of its nuclear capabilities. Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se met his U.S. counterpart John Kerry on the sidelines of a security conference in Germany on Saturday, where they said Pyongyang's nuclear program represents the biggest security threat in Northeast Asia. Minister Yoon said the two countries are working closely together on the issue and will continue to pressure the North to denuclearize. The two senior officials also agreed that this year would be a good time for President Park Geunhye to visit the U.S. and promised to consult with one another about the timing and agenda of her trip. Minister Yoon also stressed that it's important for neighboring countries to pressure North Korea to make the right decision and relay a consistent message to Pyongyang. Underlining Seoul's efforts for a denuclearized North Korea, Minister Yoon is meeting with Russia's foreign minister on Sunday to highlight the need for cooperation between the two Koreas and Russia.
We will discuss specific ways to speed up North Korea's denuclearization process among the 5 nations, including Russia.
The 6-party talks involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia that aim to denuclearize Pyongyang have long been stalled since 2008. Seoul's push to tackle the North Korean nuclear issue is expected to continue during a Korea-China-Japan ministerial meeting scheduled to take place in Seoul next month. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The U.S. government has thrown its support behind a group of historians that have been strongly protesting Japan's attempts to whitewash its wartime atrocities. The State Department says the freedom of the press is the backbone of democracy and added that it has been urging Tokyo to approach its historical wrongdoings through healing and reconciliation. This comes as a joint statement was issued by 19 US-based scholars denouncing the Abe administration's efforts to pressure US publishing firm McGraw-Hill to remove information about Japan's use of sex slaves before and during World War II. The weight of historical evidence shows the Japanese army forcibly recruited as many as 200,000 women, many of whom were Korean, to serve in military brothels. And Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is giving shape to his planned revision of the country's pacifist constitution. His party is planning to finalize its selection of items subject to amendment during the regular ongoing session right now, and then it's going to try and put the bill to a parliamentary vote in the fall of next year. Our Son Jung-in has more.
The Japanese government is moving forward with its efforts to revise the country's pacifist constitution. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party's headquarters for the promotion of revision to the constitution is expected to work on its selection of items on the agenda for constitutional amendment during the current regular session of the Diet. They plan to finalize it no later than this fall. The party then plans to submit the constitutional amendment bill at the regular session in January next year. And after the House of Councillors election next summer, they plan to put the bill in motion during the extraordinary session in fall 2016. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says the party will devote all of its energy to gain control of 2/3 of the seats in the House of Councillors election so it can swiftly move from a vote in the Diet to a public referendum in 2 years' time.
We must win the majority of the votes at the public referendum. This is our top priority.
Abe's government also plans to include other items on the agenda for constitutional amendment that are closely related to the people's lives, such as environmental rights and fiscal health, to win more public support. But a tough road lies ahead for Abe and his party, as its coalition partner, New Komeito, is deeply against the move. And according to a recent opinion poll, more than 2/3 of the Japanese public are skeptical about the planned changes. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, structural reforms regarded as crucial for reviving the sluggish Korean economy may be getting a rough shake this year due to public fears about tax increases as the government continues to wrestle with some highly critical decisions about its welfare policies. Our Kim Jeon reports.
The controversy in Korea surrounding welfare and taxes is raising concerns that it'll put the brakes on structural reforms. The reforms, categorized into four main sectors, including labor, education, and finance, are seen as necessary for reviving the Korean economy. Initially, the government argued that the next several years were crucial for carrying out the reforms. This amid concerns Korea was going to take the brunt of the blow from its fast-aging society and low birth rate. Local studies indicate Korea's potential growth rate is going to decline mainly due to labor shortages in the next decade. But it's not just the population changes. Economic indicators from the start of the year are deepening the wrinkles as well. The country's exports were slashed nearly 0.5% in January from the same period last year to $45.4 billion. The number of those employed is estimated at some 450,000 this year, down significantly from last year's 533,000. Also, deflation fears are spreading as inflation rate increases remain in the 0% range for the second consecutive month in January. The country's major retailers have seen their sales snap in January from the same period last year. Lotte Mart posted a sales drop of nearly 22%, while E-Mart and Home Plus each posted a drop of 15%. Major department stores, including Hyundai and Shinsegae, also posted a 4 to 6% sales drop during the same period. The government's year-end tax adjustments are not helping to boost consumer sentiment either. Taxpayers are to receive smaller returns or cough out more this year than in previous years. That's because the government has been running a deficit for 4 years and is also trying to meet a campaign pledge made by President Park Geunhye to boost welfare. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now, it's been 2 decades since home shopping TV channels were launched here in Korea. Since then, they've become an essential sales outlet for smaller companies. And they've also come into their own with their unusual formats and high-demand products. For this week's Industry Insight, here's Song Ji-sun.
This thread and textile company, founded half a century ago, was once facing a crisis. It was battling cheap Chinese imports while struggling to find a new retail outlet. But now it has transformed itself into a fast fashion producer, and its products are sold on 2 major TV home shopping channels. Its television sales are more than 10 times what it's raised through offline sales.
We are a traditional manufacturing company and couldn't afford all the marketing expenses needed to advertise our products. So we ventured onto home shopping channels that helped us gain wide recognition in a short period of time.
Many small and mid-sized companies like this have turned their products into household names through home shopping channels. There have been many changes in the past 2 decades since home shopping channels first launched in Korea. The channels now offer practically everything under the sun, and the format has also evolved over time. Korea's home shopping industry has created a unique business model. Unlike the kinds of short infomercials you might see in other countries, Korean home shopping channels manage to keep the viewers watch the shows for a full hour by making them entertaining. It's not just celebrities advertising the products, but ordinary people testing them with industry professionals. Korea's home shopping format of featuring a single product has also captured viewers overseas, especially in Asia. 4 Korean channels, mostly run by large conglomerates, have entered 10 countries over the past decade. And this leading channel is now seeking to expand its sales overseas to become the world's #1 home shopping distributor by 2020.
We've reduced the risks by entering the market through joint ventures, and we established an international outsourcing company to customize our product line. We also focus on introducing Korean products by smaller companies because it is harder for them to enter foreign markets than larger companies can.
In fact, over 70% of Korean products sold overseas through the channel are by small and mid-sized companies, creating a new Korean wave of products. Government regulators say home shopping companies' move into foreign markets could also help improve market issues here at home, like the high commission taken by the stations.
Expanding their overseas business could improve their profits as domestic market growth is slowing down, whereas foreign markets are just booming. This could also make room for domestic home shopping channels to lower their commission rates, which stand as an entry barrier for small and mid-sized companies.
The government will also launch a new public home shopping channel in the first half that will be solely dedicated to handling the products of small and mid-sized companies in its bid to help startups use home shopping channels to introduce their products. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, on the global front, European leaders have reached a date for talks on resolving the Ukraine crisis, hopefully in a peaceful manner. For more on this and other global headlines, let's connect live to Eunice Kim at the News Center. So, Eunice, Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet face-to-face with Ukrainian leader Petro Poroshenko at this crucial summit.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. And the date set is February 11th. That is this Wednesday in the Belarusian capital of Minsk. It is the result of active lobbying on the part of German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande, who met with both leaders separately in recent days with a draft peace plan in hand. Now, the details of that plan has not been publicized, but the goal for all sides is clear. It would be to draft a way out of the current crisis in eastern Ukraine that has so far killed more than 5,300 people since breaking out last April. And the plan is thought to include a revised provision on the demilitarized zone, war border some 50 to 70 kilometers from the current front lines. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the talks would only happen if an agreement is reached on a number of points beforehand. This as heavy fighting continues in a strategic town in eastern Ukraine. Some 170 civilians were seen escaping to the Ukrainian capital of Kiev on Sunday, while hundreds of vehicles were seen crossing into the Russian border.
Well, let's hope we see a diplomatic solution to that crisis. Jordan, meanwhile, continued to pound Islamic State-held territories in Syria over the weekend in what it says is still the beginning of revenge for the group's gruesome murder of a Jordanian pilot.
That's right, and Jordan's Air Force chief promised to wipe the Islamic State off the face of the earth, to borrow some of his words there. He did also announce in that press conference that his forces launched 56 airstrikes against the group since Thursday. General Mansour al-Jabour said IS weapon depots, training centers, and military barracks were targeted in this latest barrage, and that he estimates the extremist group has lost some 7,000 fighters and 20% of its military capabilities since the start of the coalition airstrikes. He said Jordan was responsible for nearly 20% of the sorties to date. This as a squadron of F-16 fighter jets from the UAE arrived in Jordan with reported plans to coordinate airstrikes against IS with Amman.
And Eunice, a standoff over Greece's future prospects in the Eurozone has gotten even more real now, as the new anti-austerity Prime Minister, Alexis Tsipras, has said that he's not going to back down from his pre-election pledges.
And you're absolutely right. At least one prominent economist is now publicly saying that a Grexit, that is, Greece exiting the Eurozone, is inevitable. That's according to former U.S. Fed Chairman Alan Greenspan, who went on to say that he couldn't see any institution taking on Greece's debts given the current conditions. He also had a forecast for the Eurozone at large. He said it would be hard-pressed to continue unless the 19-nation fiscal bloc merges politically as well. Meanwhile, on Sunday, Greece's Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras laid out a series of commitments before his parliament, including a gradual minimum wage hike and a reinstatement of public sector employees, both of which, Mark, is significant because they counter EU conditions for receiving bailout money. Now, despite Eurogroup's rejection, Prime Minister Tsipras maintained that what Greece needs is a bridge loan, not more bailout money that had ultimately failed Greece, in his words.
Yeah, Greece really shaking up the political scene in Europe at the moment. Interesting to see how that's going to play out. Well, thank you very much, Eunice, and we'll see you back again at noon.
See you then.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, where today marks the 1096, or exactly 3 years until the big event kicks off. And now to commemorate the special day, there's going to be a special event being held at the resort town. And a lot of hands-on events set to take place today, including a 3-kilometer mock torch relay with 60 torch bearers, with participants being allowed to try out Olympic events such as bobsleighing and cross-country skiing. And at the end of the ceremony, a time capsule will be buried with well-wishing messages for those who will compete in the Games 3 years from now. Now, despite some bumps on the road, the organizing committee hopes to be on track to complete the constructions for the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. Now, once the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang kicks off in 3 years' time, one of the events the Koreans are set to dominate in are the short track events. And the Korean dominance continued during the 5th stage of the ISU Short Track World Cup in Germany. Now, first off, over in the men's 1500-meter event, Shin Da-eun wins his 5th straight gold medal after coming in at a final time of 2 minutes, 24.438 seconds, as he continues his role as the ace of the men's team. And over in the women's races, teenage sensation Choi Min-jung wins the women's 1500-meter event, followed by Olympic gold medalist Shim Seok-ki in the second race, while Kim Ah-rang wins her first gold medal this season after winning the 1,000-meter event. Now, usually when it comes to short track and medals, a name that usually pops up every single time is Lee Sang-hwa, literally every single time in the 500-meter event. But this past weekend, she almost went without a single medal for the first time in 3 years before adding a late silver in the second race. Now, after finishing the second 500-meter race of the competition at 38.21 seconds, she would add the late silver medal as fans worried whether or not her medal streak will come to an end. But despite all that, experts are getting worried that her knee condition is worse than initially thought. Of course, at the beginning of the season, the Olympic gold medalist has opted to go for physical therapy instead of getting the surgery, but seems like the current treatment isn't as effective as Lee Sang-hwa has slowed down significantly. Now, Korea has successfully hosted some of the biggest sporting events, international sporting events that is, but the F1 Korea Grand Prix isn't one of them. After 6 years, everything is now coming to an end. With the Korea Grand Prix being left off the 2015 calendar, all signs point to the event never coming back to the nation. And with that, after 6 years, the event organizing committee has disbanded. Now, with the race taking place for the first time back in 2010, the event has lost a significant amount of money in each year the race took place, leading to the race eventually getting axed. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Seoul and the surrounding areas are having another bone-chilling morning today. The low in Seoul has plunged to -13 this morning, and that's about 10 degrees lower than the seasonal averages, though the high will be much higher today, climbing up to 0 here in Seoul later this afternoon. And the skies should remain clear under mostly to partly sunny skies throughout the day, but dry conditions continue, so be sure to stay hydrated by drinking plenty of water. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the ratings for today. So the daytime high in Seoul will climb up to 0, while the top temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 3 and 1, and Busan will only top out at 2 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 2 and 1 respectively, and Dokdo only peaks at 0. Now it seems like the temperature readings will finally go back to the seasonal averages tomorrow. Then it should remain on the mild side throughout the week. But that's all for the weather. Be sure to stay warm today.
Well, thank you very much, Jeon, for the weather there. And that is all we have for now. Plenty more stories online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone app for all the latest news and programs as well. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.